Hello, fellow gym rats. It's SC Fitness here, and today we are going to explore the question and put the debate to bed of are genetics to blame for a poor physique and a poor performance. So this is a heavily debated topic and it needs to be addressed as some people may blame their genetics for their lack of energy, lack of performance, or a bad physique. Some people will say no excuses whatsoever, and it really varies. So we really need to put this debate to bed of if genetics are to blame for those things like a poor physique or bad performance. So that's what we're going to be exploring today. Let's start with first the obvious reasons of why genetics are to blame for poor performance or a bad physique. For starters, there's about three main reasons why genetics are to blame for a poor performance or poor physique, as these reasons are very obvious and they can be easily told. So first reason, of course, if you have a disability, then it's really hard to work out and it's really hard to keep a schedule. Not saying that you cannot. If some people can do it, this is really something that is possible, but very, very hard, and it's not really your fault if you do not have the best physique, or you do not look amazing, or you're not putting the work in if you are disabled. That really, that's something where you cannot control that. You cannot control it. Second is, of course, if there's a medication that you have to take that either prevents you from gaining weight, or it's not good to do that, or it's not good to work out, or it makes you gain weight. So there are a lot of variations, of course. There are a lot of variations of really the medication and what it can prevent you from doing, and that's why it's an obvious yes, as genetics can be to blame if some medication forces you to gain weight because you cannot overcome the calorie surplus you'd be in. So of course, the last reason would be if you have an injury or a temporary condition where your physique really wears off and where you kind of fall off. If you have an injury, of course, take it easy. Or if you're fasting, take it easy. You do not need to be blamed for your physique falling off during those times because it's more important to do something like that than to work out. Like, it's more important to recover your injuries. Do not get out of injury too quickly. Do not try to rush the recovery. And that's my third obvious reason for why genetics definitely are fully to blame, and you can blame them. You have an excuse to blame them for a poor physique or poor athletic performance. Alright, quick disclaimer before I move on. You should first know how good your genetics are and make sure you get that from an educated source, not just a bunch of fitness influencers. Because you cannot say by looking at Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Tristan Lee, Greg Doucette, other influencers, if you have good genetics or not. They have fantastic genetics. They have great lighting, a great production team. They have worked super hard. They also are enhanced, and also they have really good trainers usually, and they've competed. They are very knowledgeable. So once you combine all of that, you basically don't know where your genetics compare to them. If you, basically, for Dwayne The Rock Johnson, I bet you, 99.9999 people couldn't get to his physique, no matter how hard they tried. Really, his physique is amazing. And you guys need to understand what genetics levels are realistic and what are not. People usually go for such unrealistic goals, unrealistic expectations, because they see Instagram and they think that's normal. That is not normal, guys. On Instagram, you see the cream, the absolute top, the cream of the crop. You do not see average people. And so make sure you get your sources on genetics from people who are educational and who know what they're talking about. From multiple sources, I would say. Make sure you get your genetics, of course, as then, only then you'll realize if you have good genetics or bad genetics. So now let's move on to the more obvious parts where genetics do not necessarily give you poor performance, or you cannot use it as an excuse for poor performance or a poor physique. So let's say you're just not working, you're just sitting on the couch doing nothing and not trying to fix the problem physically or mentally with your physique or your performance. Then genetics are not to blame, because first, you probably don't even know how good your genetics are, and second, you're kind of not really putting in effort that you should, and if you put in more effort, maybe you'll get results. I feel if you do not put in effort, you have no excuse to complain about results. If you do, you may. So basically, that's something that where you definitely do not, you cannot use genetics as a leeway to poor performance and a poor physique. Maybe you have bad genetics, but you cannot use that as kind of an escape route or an excuse. So now let's move on. So now that you know that you need to be looking for educational sources when you discover how good your genetics are, now you can really discover, are your genetics good or bad, and if you can use them as a leeway or as an excuse. First of all, I believe that no one should use genetics as an excuse to quit. They only should acknowledge that. And so now let's move on to where your genetics may be used as something that can be counted. And so basically, let's say you are trying your hardest to really build a good physique. You're really dieting hard, you're training harder than last time, and you do not quite get the results you do. Let's say you're working your tail off and you do not quite get the results you do, then genetics may be a factor. You can say, I have bad genetics. You can kind of say that's part of the blame, but you cannot. You cannot quit because of that. As genetics can be a leeway to say, hey, I know my genetics are bad. Here's what I do to change it. So, like, let's say, basically, I'm having trouble to put on muscle, which I did. I said my genetics aren't the best for building muscle. My genetics are good for a lean physique. So I said that, but I also said to myself that there are other ways that I could get better. There are other ways. I said to myself, keep on trying, and there are other methods of getting good nutrition that you might not think of immediately. Like, for example, if you have 3 cups of chocolate milk, that's 450 calories, 24 grams of protein, you're well on your way, and that's another good step to building muscle, to getting enough protein to build the muscle. And so, once you get into more ideas, you can get more creative and find more ways to get your required nutrients for the goal that you want. So, it's really like, it's different as once you get to that point, then you should try to find more creative solutions. You should try to either trust the process or, as I said, find more creative solutions. And with those, like, let's say you're having trouble losing fat and you have really bad genetics, and some people can lose fat much easier than you can, and all that. Let's say that happens. You can use a cookbook. There are other ways. You can get low calorie foods. There are a lot of other ways to really like lose that belly fat and get creative and lose the weight. So you can find other ways, even if you have bad genetics, you're working your tail off and you're not getting quite the results. Maybe you need a bit of whey protein. I'm not saying everyone needs that. I'm saying that some people may need just a little. That's another solution. Make sure you don't overdose on that stuff and take that safely. But that's what I feel about genetics. I hope you guys learned a lot about should genetics be an excuse. This is a very debatable topic, so I just wanted to scratch the surface. I just wanted to say what I felt without offending anyone. I hope I didn't. And shout out to Ryan Pockrass, and he really helped me with advertising, and so I got my 50 subscribers. I just thought I would give a nice shout out to Ryan Pockrass. He's been a really nice person. He's on my soccer team, and that's kind of all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and follow this channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.